For our final lesson in our civil rights unit, today we looked at this idea of affirmative action. Now, the reason why I put this at the end is because the idea of affirmative action applies to all of the people that we've learned about the last few days. And I acknowledge this is a highly controversial issue. So let's debate it, because debating controversial issues is fun. Probably why I'm a social studies teacher. So let me take you back to the roots of the idea, which was back in the Kennedy administration in 1961. Now, President Kennedy issued Executive Order 10925 and used affirmative action for the first time by instructing federal contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are treated equally without regard to race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, and established the Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity. So I think you see what he's doing here. He's attempting to make America more inclusive. That was quite progressive, especially for 1961. That was a change from our past history. And I'm going to jump ahead a few years to 1964. Now, the man who took over for President Kennedy after he was assassinated was President Johnson. And President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into law. Now, this piece of legislation prohibited employment discrimination by large employers and determined whether or not they would have government contracts and established the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. And this was important. I'm going to say is important because we are still feeling the effects of this today. This was a major, major piece of legislation. I don't know if you remember this. First week of school, when we were kind of getting the foundations down, I surveyed you to the 10 biggest accomplishments of government, and then I showed you the list from the experts. And this was on that list of the top 10 pieces of legislation in American history. So it is important. So I'm going to jump ahead to 1970, and here we see President Nixon signing Order Number 4. Now, it authorized flexible goals and timetables, and here's the language here, to correct underutilization of minorities by federal contractors. Now we are seeing the controversy because underutilization, I think everybody could agree after the Civil Rights Unit, a lot of people were quote unquote underutilized. But does that mean a contract has to come from a minority, or do you place a quota? If so, what percentage is that quota? Is a woman a minority? What constitutes a minority? These sorts of questions emerge from this, and it's a very debatable topic, at this point. So I'm going to jump ahead to 1978 with the case of University of California versus Bakke. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court in Regents of the University of California versus Bakke upheld the use of race as one factor in choosing among qualified applicants for admission. At the same time, it also ruled unlawful the University Medical School's practice of reserving 18 seats in each entering class of 100 for disadvantaged minority students. So there is Mr. Bakke doing his thing legally, and if you miss class, we watched this 2-3 minute video on this. Now, in the end, they deemed this unconstitutional. Okay, so you can see the direction of this country looking at affirmative action more as a negative. It's unconstitutional. It takes away from, merit-based admissions, all that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to keep it local here and go to 2003, the case of Gratz versus Bollinger. And I remember this vividly. Okay, so this was a Supreme Court case where a young lady applied to U of M. She had all the high grades and, college admission that most people would take, and they didn't accept her. And then she looked deeper into it, and she found out that the University of Michigan used a 150-point scale to rank applicants. If you were a minority, you received 20 points automatically. So if we juxtapose that with a perfect SAT score, which very, very few people achieve, that was worth 12 points. Being born a certain way was 20 points. And this case went on a long, long time. And it actually resulted about having this issue on the ballot, and Michiganders disproportionately, it wasn't even close, said they did not want affirmative action in Michigan. Okay, so that's an overview, some of the past historical events and cases and whatnot. And now it's debate time. So we have two sides. There's going to be a pro side. They are going to dig in the positive aspects of affirmative action. They're going to say affirmative action is a positive, it's a good, something we should have in society. And the other side will be the con side, the negatives of affirmative action. And here's two political cartoons to make my point. And I may ask you to argue a side you don't personally believe in, and that's okay, because if you have a belief, you better know your opponent's belief as well, if not better, than your own. That's important, okay? So after our debate, which is going to take the majority of the class, the wrap-up writing is this. So if you are watching this because you missed class, please do it on your own. Look at the pros of affirmative action, the negative aspects of affirmative action. And here's what I'm going to ask you to write. Please write a synopsis of the first 5 slides of this PowerPoint. Following that, state the compelling arguments for and against affirmative action. And I know at this point you want to express your own view, which I get, no problem. Finally, state your own viewpoint and elucidate your reasoning. Bear in mind, on those FRQs, you need to provide your reasoning, not just your assertion, but your reasoning. Okay, so that'll be good practice for the FRQ. Provide evidence, provide reasoning. So, hey, regardless how you decide on this issue, I'll leave that up to you, but know both sides of it, regardless your vantage point. All right, so it was a good unit. I appreciate everybody's input and solid efforts, and thank you for watching.